Welcome to a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms new dawn today. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unplanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Welcome to the episode number 20 of the Legacy News. And we got another good one for you. But at the same time, Brutus is here. We are the champions, the national champions, the undisputedest champions. I don't know how to say it, man, but 10 years in the making is a long fucking time. Brutus is happy. I'm fucking happy. I am the legacy of Jennifer Aunt Kaiser. That's JT Tuimalahu. That's Jack Sawyer, Ohio's native son, the legend that became with his scoop and score for damn near 70 fucking yards. I think 75 yards through the heart of Texas to get us to the national championship. We beat the other kings of the North, Notre Dame, down in Atlanta. But we are the champions. But at the same time, this is not what this episode's about. There are some champions. And that would probably be...
We are the champions, my
Hello,
friend.
Andy J.
Hello, Legacy Zach.
My name is Zachary Kaiser. You don't have to call me Legacy, Zach. I am the legacy. That is the truth. But at the same time, this is awesome just to be a Buckeye fan. The Buckeye Nation, I mean, they've done it. They did it. Ryan Day did it. He won 4 straight games, big games. That was...
It just
I don't have
words to it. You're so happy, huh?
I'm just so happy, man. I mean, one of the things that out of all the grief that he got, it was, could he win the big game? Well, you beat Tennessee, you beat Oregon, you beat Texas, and then you beat Notre Dame, all top 10 rated teams. Two of which were in the top 5. So he did it. He won big games. He won the national championship. He saves his hot seat for a hot second. Let's see if he can take that into next season and finally beat Michigan. But at the same time, we are the champions, but so is the Conservative Party in Great Britain.
Well, Let me
That was
just
a little
comment
tongue
on
in cheek.
about your football here before we do go on to the video. Yeah, Ohio needs at least one football champion in town.
What's that
Get
supposed
all
to
the way
mean?
up to get all the way up to the Super Bowl. Drop the ball. Let's go
I mean,
Bengals! Come on, you got it in you. You
that's
can do it.
the Bengals are the Bengals have been bungling forever. So they've been to 3 Super Bowls. I mean, for real, that's something special. Um, they'll get back. They'll get to it. Although, actually, there's some things going on. I actually just watched a couple things. It was a WCPO or Channel 9 here in Cincinnati report. I just recently just watched it. It was posted on their YouTube from 2 days ago. So it's a couple days ago that they reported it. But there are some things working around 25 years in the making. So this is news. And this has a lot to do with politics and taxpayer because taxpaying stadiums in the specifically in the NFL, but most sports stadiums are taxpayer funded. Uh, Paul Brown Stadium, or as it is known as now, Paycor Stadium, since the Bengals sold the rights to Paycor, the naming rights, which in effect is one thing the county is arguing they violated in the lease agreement, that without approval by the county commissioners, the Bengal organization went against the will and stole the naming rights of the stadium, Paul Brown, to Paycor a couple years ago. Anyways, there's a big old thing going on politically between the Bengals organization and the county commissioner surrounding upgrade and upkeep of the 25-year-old Paul Brown, aka Paycor Stadium, for which could theoretically see a possibility of Cincinnati trying to leave if they don't get a deal had. I mean, that's what happens when you have taxpayer funded. And it's not like there isn't any precedent with the state of Ohio. Cleveland, under the ownership of Art Modell in 1996, couldn't get the same thing when it came to upgrades and upkeep and new stadiums and funded by the taxpayers of Cuyahoga County and the city of Cleveland. And so Cleveland actually literally overnight fled the city of Cleveland and worked out a deal in Baltimore. And the rest is history. Cleveland left for Baltimore. The city of Cleveland itself would end up filing suit for the name rights of the Cleveland Browns so that they could at least stop them from being the Baltimore Browns, and thus the Baltimore Ravens were born. I still claim that 2000 Super Bowl that the Ravens won. Go Browns. That was basically the Browns, but that's just my personal preference. But at the same time, there is precedent. So to be on this political driven legacy news narrative, there's another hint of news going on in Cincinnati when it comes to sports and politics and taxpayer funding stadiums and your corruption within your county commissionership and in bed with billionaire families. There you go. I said billionaires, lefties. Get angry like you're always going to do. Go riot in the streets. Summer of love.
All right. Hey, making a comeback here. Trump's just gotten into office again. So, but speaking of riots and
hold the horses. Let's get some of that news. Trump just was inaugurated. It seems that some January 6 folks have actually been pardoned. So he actually started his pardon scheme. I have yet to hear anything about Ross. Has he pardoned Ross yet? Something about him going to
it's in process, is what I've been told, or what I've heard. Sorry,
but he said that his promise was day one, though.
I understand the narrow specific date, but yeah,
no, it's happening.
I'm worrying about Roger Ver because he's kind of
for real.
He's not. There's not as much pressure behind the scenes as there is for Ross Ulbricht. But I think they're both very important cases.
I disagree. I think there's a lot of pressure behind the scenes when it comes to Roger, because Roger is looking at way too much time for tax stuffs, 10 years in the making after renouncing his citizenship. So I think Roger's case is a lot worse than Ross on the fact that Roger isn't even an American citizen, hasn't been an American citizen in 10 years. And they're trying to, they are actually, the United States, the IRS, the world is trying to make Roger Ver an example. Don't,
Yeah.
And,
I'm
and,
talking
and
about the
I,
social pressure. The social pressure isn't as significant as it is with Ross Ulbricht because not enough people have heard the story yet.
I don't think there is any social pressure with Ross Ulbricht. I think it's all politics. I think the LP decided to jump into bed with Trump, believing a grifter was the right pathway to go for the movement of liberty. And in reality, you got grifted. Congratulations. You got by a grifting political pundit, somebody that's been enmeshed. And I know Trump is not a politician. Well, he is now because he's been in what he's had his first term. So now he is in bed as a politician. And two, he's been in the influence of the political sphere all his life. He kind of has had to because of the business he operates in, specifically in real estate and trademarking.
That makes sense.
So we will keep an eye out. We will hope and pray for the best. I hope that the promise that Trump made to the libertarians at their gay ass convention last May comes true, because Ross Ulbricht, it's time for you to come home. It's time for your mother to see her baby boy face to face. It's time for your family to finally have some closure. It's time for you, my man, to get out of this. Yeah, it is. It's
Move on to
time
the
for you to
second
come
act of
home.
his life.
Exactly. I mean, 10 years, 11 years is a long time for operating a marketplace. He's done his time. He doesn't deserve 2 life sentences in 40 years. I don't even care if he's pardoned at this point. Just commute the fucking sentence and bring him home. I'd prefer a pardon, but
We're not picky right now. Just get him out.
just get him the fuck out. Just like with Julian Assange. I'm glad that he's out. I'm glad a deal was had. I don't care. At least, even though he still had to, he still has to. I don't even think the plea is actually officially gone through with sentencing. But even though he had to plea and admit guilt in some facet, at least Julian Assange is home and with his family and not locked down in an embassy somewhere awaiting an extradition on whether or not he's going to the United States. So, I mean, that's all that matters, and is the lives of these men and anybody. I mean, anybody that are some sort of political prisoner in some facet. It's time to bring them home.
Let's bring the machine down. That's what we got to do. But you know how it's
Exactly.
easy to say something. It's a lot harder to actually do it. We'll see what happens with this Department of Government Efficiency. It even comes close to what they're saying. I really doubt it.
Speaking of that, did you read anything? I've read a couple things. I guess Vivek is stepping down from Doge.
They're encouraging him to consider running for the governor of
Running
Ohio.
for governor of Ohio. Yeah. It's a shitstorm on Twitter, because I think part of the narrative is they're forcing him out, and then the other part of the narrative is they're wanting him to run against Mike DeWine in the to primary Mike DeWine, and then eventually run for governor when he wins the primary, which I don't think he would. I don't think he'd win the primary, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think he'd win the primary. Yeah. Ohio is too conservatively progressive. Let's just put it that way.
But they're separating them so they can take them down one at a time. That's how they operate. The people in power.
What, Vivek?
People. Well, they were in the Department of Government Efficiency, but now they're separated instead of together. And that's just how it is with people. They're specialists in this kind of thing. They know how to take people down, so they're going to use all their tricks, even if they're on the back pedal, so to speak.
Will do. Well, anyways, what are we about to watch, and what is this all about today, Andrew? I know it has something to do with the British Conservative Party, the Tories, as they should be renowned. I just call them a bunch of right-wing progressives, but whatever.
When we first launched this channel, we had Martin Goldberg on, formerly known as Economic Invincibility on YouTube, and it's just been a while since we had. We're not talking to him directly, but I figured we watched his perspective on British politics and the Conservative Party, and just comment on it a little bit after the video. So it's about 20 minutes. It's a pretty good video. I watched it already, but let's go ahead and jump into it. Are you all ready? Yeah, here we go.
Back here with Goldberg. Today we'll be talking about British politics and particularly the Conservative Party, its recent history and evolutions. A couple of texts that are worth considering are going to be Ken Clark's Kind of Blue. So he was a moderate conservative elected in 1970. He served all the way till 2019. So he was able to experience the years of Callaghan, Wilson, Heath, Thatcher, Major, Blair, and of course, David Cameron. His description of those changing eras is, in my opinion, it's nice to get past all the excessive emotions in politics and see what was going on. As I understand, it was first the Labour Party that called out the problem of trade unions controlling everything. And Heath had tried to address it, failed, but Thatcher was successful. There are debates still, was it a good thing? They crushed the labor unions. Privatization, did that lead to a stronger UK or more offshoring? I know Peter Hitchens has been a vocal critic of the privatization of British Rail, and some of the data does add up where it hasn't necessarily saved much money to the people or to the government. There was the push by Michael Heseltine towards leveling up, which is to revitalize some of these cities such as Liverpool, other areas. It will surprise some of you to know the UK is not as wealthy as you might believe. There's a lot of regions that are underdeveloped that are using technology decades past, like some of the rail lines still communicate with fax machines, believe it or not. Thatcher, despite being portrayed as this radical right-winger, she was more pragmatic. She supported tax increases. She was not necessarily a social tradcon. And she pushed for the single European market. She didn't like, perhaps, the European Parliament, the excessive regulation, which is a very real phenomenon, but would she have supported getting out of the EU, at least according to Michael Heseltine? No. And to be fair, Michael Heseltine is an establishment conservative, but it is kind of worth noting when you consider how a lot of Brexiteers say, oh, she was totally against it. Another book worth mentioning is, well, pretty much anything by Rory Stewart. So he's done a couple of travel memoirs about Afghanistan way back in the day. He was a regional bureaucratic administrator in Iraq, and he has probably the best firsthand experience with the disaster that was the post-Iraq War period. It's called Prince of the Marshes, highly recommended. And more recently, he came out with a How Not to Be a Politician, which goes into the inner workings of the British government, talking about how frustrating it is. So he had worked at an NGO and had some experience with how grants work, whatnot. The Conservatives under David Cameron, they wanted to appear more progressive. So they said, we're going to maintain a certain percent of GDP committed to foreign aid, although that came at the expense of the prison system. And we can discuss that perhaps later on. As it happened, Rory Stewart, he was a junior minister, and he was looking into, okay, so we have this program to provide literacy training to girls in Mali. And almost 10 years later, they're all literate for the most part. We've built a hospital in Nigeria, and Nigerians are taking craps on the floor. We're giving money to this little local government council in Syria. And he says, Could it be going to jihadis? Well, possibly. So we're not going to send it there. Oh, well, you can't make that decision, and the head of the department can't make the decision. You have all these different intricacies with the government wherein if you don't basically outright just reduce the spending, it's very hard to reform anything because everyone's trying to hold on to their resources and power and titles, even, by the way, if they're right wing, many of the cases. So Thatcher leaves office in 1990, replaced by John Major, who serves until 1997, and there's the electoral wipeout with Tony Blair. After this point, you have William Hague. He's a somewhat competent leader, but just facing insurmountable odds. He's replaced by Ian Duncan Smith. The quiet man is turning up the volume. Very much not inspiring. You get Michael Howard, who's on the right in this picture, probably the last pretty radical right leader. And I say that relative to the UK, of course. He supported a lot of restrictions on immigration, a much harsher penal system. In 2005, he's able to get the conservatives back to some measure of viability, but they still can't dislodge Blair. And he says, based upon his age, he's stepping down. This is when you have David Cameron on the scene. Now, there's a lot of criticisms of David Cameron, but I suspect he's going to be potentially remembered as one of the last successful British prime ministers, despite all the disaster that came afterwards. And maybe that's the main reason. Nonetheless, he gets elected. He was this PR guy, make the conservatives look more modern, coming to power in 2010 in coalition with the Lib Dems, who are a center-left but pro-business party. He manages to get them to take the fall for all the unpopular decisions of the government, the austerity measures, increases in or introduction of tuition fees. The Lib Dems try to push for an alternative vote referendum, which is going to help third parties, and they fail. Other stuff that David Cameron did, some restrictions on immigration, which ironically was a little bit easier to do that when they were still part of the EU. Once they left the EU, they were complaining about Romanians, Poles, Bulgarians coming in. And once they left the EU, they ended up with a bunch of people from the Caribbean and other Commonwealth regions. So basically less or more diversity in a varied sense. Cameron further expands the leveling up agenda, trying to add economic investment to depressed areas of the country, emphasize infrastructure. And he had this vision of the UK being something of a tech hub, which is maybe not the worst concept due to the fact that post the empire, there's been a gradual slide. They've lost industries, they've lost prominence. I don't really consider the UK to be a world power. They have more influence based upon their prestige of the past than anything today. So he was at the front of that. And localism, devolution. So you had more directly elected mayors, these positions of police commissioners. Not everything being perfect, but the idea is move from a purely unitary state where you basically have the national government, the parliament, and then some local councils to a system where a little bit more, I guess, closeness when it comes to elected officials. Other stuff he did, legalization of homosexual marriage. You can debate whether that's a good thing or not. Got involved in the Libya campaign, probably his worst move, but he did defeat the Scottish independence referendum in 2014. And this was the basis for suggesting maybe just have a Brexit vote. They're going to lose. And then Farage will say, okay, you had your fun. Now go into the history books and you can proceed on. Well, the gamble failed. He actually lost that one. Despite Cameron claiming he was going to stay on as prime minister, he saw the writing on the wall. He realized that the Conservative Party was going to destroy itself post-Brexit. And so he resigned, although he later came back to be foreign minister briefly under Rishi Sunak. At this point, you have the election of Theresa May as leader of the party. She was one of those waiting my turn, not a particularly inspiring individual, but she tries. She attempts to get a deal that would have an economic backstop. Because just because you leave the EU politically doesn't necessarily mean you should be without an economic program, as there's a lot of trade across the channel. It reminds me in a way what the right-wing Brexiteers were doing, kind of like the Tea Party in the US. They got elected in 2010, and then they refused to negotiate in good faith on anything. So even if Obama said, hey, we can change the CPI calculations for Social Security, we can make some cuts here, they were like, nope, we don't get exactly what we want, we're not going to negotiate. So in our context, their idea of victory is, okay, get rid of John Boehner. Oh, Paul Ryan's right wing. Oh, no, he's a rhino. Get rid of him. Kevin McCarthy. Oh, he's a rhino. And then you had all these people, Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan, Tom Emmer, all stepping up and falling down the trapdoor. They were even trying to get rid of MAGA Mike Johnson recently. And the Speaker of the House is a relatively meaningless position. It has not all that much power outside of the people backing it. So as I've said, would you prefer to have a right-winger who's reliant on the moderates marginally, or a moderate who is reliant on the right-wingers? I suspect that if our president operated like the South African system, dependent on the parliament, we would have had far more, because you'd have these little gimmicks of getting people out just because they don't do exactly what they want. And this is the issue, in my opinion, where politicians, their salaries are guaranteed, and the media people make money based upon how outraged folks are, how much they're clicking. So there's no incentive to say, hey, this isn't such a bad deal. It could help the country long term. It's like, nope, we just want to win and be ideologically pure. So Theresa May coughs, and resigns. We have Boris Johnson. Funny enough, almost like it's a script, we have our guy with goofy blonde hair in the US, and they get their own version. Boris Johnson, you protoplasmic vegetable jellies, a guy who never had any principles. He endorsed Obama. Then he said later on, oh, Obama hates the West because he has a Kenyan background. Johnson was like a moderate, one nation conservative. Then all of a sudden he's on the Brexit bandwagon. He was the type of guy who just wanted to be prime minister for the history books. He didn't care what he accomplished. And you saw that disastrous mismanagement of COVID, in the sense that they were telling people you can't visit your family members while the politicians are having parties, kicking it like it's, nothing has happened. So Johnson is finally removed from office in 2022, and we get Liz Truss. Truss, in my opinion, is a great composite of the issues facing the UK on multiple levels. So she was initially a Liberal Democrat when she was younger, but she got elected in 2010 to be a member of parliament. So she was 35, if I'm not mistaken, at this stage. And just is that, 2 years later, she's parliamentary undersecretary of state for childcare and education. Now, she has a couple of kids. Mind you, she cucked her husband and made him stay. So you got a sense of the character. But she's not a teacher. So why is she in this role? 2 years after that, Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. According to Rory Stewart, who worked with her in one of the ministries, she didn't even think there was any difference between rural populations and urban populations. And Liz Truss, if you listen to her, sees everything as numbers. So she claimed she didn't care if lighter complexion people disappeared from the UK as long as there was economic growth. That was her big kind of a libertarian-esque arguments. She also had the tendency of ordering multiple people that were subservient to her to all independently work on the same plan. And she got angry when they would try to share notes, because according to her, she wanted to see the best outcome so she could pick like some kind of apprentice style executive. But what happens is you're wasting time and resources. No surprise there, though. It's all about politicians' egos. And Priti Patel is another one who's been described that way. She was just a lightweight who had this idea of herself as a top-tier manager. So then in 2016, Truss becomes Secretary of State for Justice, Lord Chancellor. So now she's in charge of courts and prison systems, even though she has no background as a cop or a police officer. What happened, as I mentioned earlier, when they were trying to emphasize foreign aid over other areas, so they made cuts to prisons. British prisons are an utter disaster. They're overcrowded. They're filled with, drug running, crime. There's a lot of Muslim cells there. And they've been releasing people. Actually, conservatives were the ones releasing prisoners onto the streets because they couldn't afford to keep them housed. And now, of course, the labor had to put people in prison or kick out more Muslim cells to bring in the people who are protesting the Muslim cells sexually assaulting girls. So it's not a very ideal structure. She is in that position for 1 year, then she becomes Chief Secretary of Treasury. Okay. Then she's Secretary of State for International Trade, President Board of Trade, Minister of Women and Equalities. What the hell does that even mean? Like, what kind of department is that? Can you imagine? Secretary of State for Foreign Commonwealth Development Affairs. Then she becomes Prime Minister. So very clearly someone who was just brown-nosing David Cameron and Theresa May, not an individual who really is suited for any of these positions. She comes in, she proposes tax cuts and some budget reductions that the market does not appreciate, and she's gone within 50 days, which I think demonstrates just the lower caliber of politicians they have now, but also to an extent, if you're going to be a woman in politics, you have to have backbone. You can't, roll over as soon as there's some bad headlines. So her attempt to be Thatcher definitely failed. Just to point out, there was much made of her cabinet because the top positions were all held by diversity types. So Kwesi Kwarteng was Exchequer Secretary or Chancellor. That's basically their Secretary of Treasury from Ghana. Sir James Cleverly, who is of mixed descent. And, this is a guy, he had a background in the military. So you think, okay, more suited for certain roles. But he still went on Twitter and he was going, back when I was a lad, there weren't a lot of brown boys to look up to in the media. I'm like, you're a conservative, man? You for real? This guy, Jeremy Hunt, is married to someone, she's probably a Chinese foreign agent. This is Suella Braverman. This is a perfect microcosm. So she's the daughter of Indian immigrants from Uganda. She's a Buddhist married to a Care Bear. She looks kind of like a Muppet, but she was the hard line on immigration type. I mean, this is the problem with financial democratic politics. Kind of like in the America, we had this notion, at least boomers did, that Vivek Ramaswamy was going to be the guy who would stop immigration. I mean, it's just ridiculous on its head. Unfortunately, these systems that everyone's just an interchangeable part. As long as you have money or you simp for the right figures, you get these roles, even though it's completely contradictory that you would even be in them. And that's what modernity provides. Once Truss leaves office, Ritzy Sunak has his second go. He's elected unopposed. And they said he's the diversity whiz kid who will save the UK. Now, Sunak, definitely more competent than Truss. I will say it was part of an era, though, where they put up all these figures almost to walk off cliffs. So Varadkar, the diversity power bottom in Ireland, he was a disaster. He was basically turning the police against his own people. You had Von Gething in Wales very quickly out of office. He said that when his dad, who was white, who married an African woman, got a job and then brought his brown boys to the office, they rescinded the offer. You had Humza Yousaf in Scotland, who took power and started whining about how there weren't enough Pakistani curry cells like himself in the country. And Sadiq Khan is the surviving figure, but even Ritzy Sunak, everyone knew he was going to get slaughtered in the election. And the way he campaigned, you could tell he was out of touch. He came up a little bit autistic, like he could not connect with regular people. That being said, to his credit, he managed to repeal, I think it was 800 plus statutes that they were still tied to in relation to the EU. So even though they left the EU, they were still somehow forced to, accede to its regulations. And this was a big problem when it came to the Rwanda plan. So they said, we'll take these refugees, we'll bribe the Rwandan government to take them instead of bring them into the UK, when in reality, you should just be able to sink the boats. Like, what's stopping you? Oh, well, we have to think about their humanity. And that's really modernity. Again, these countries are forced to honor their supposed principles over their own interests. So you have to accommodate these folks just because they exist. It's like no nation in the past cared that much about refugees. It's really interesting how this wool was pulled over the eyes of the public. In any case, Sunak gets destroyed by Sakir Starmer in the 2024 election. And then you have this race where there's a number of mediocrities. I think it was Tom Tugendhat is a Care Bear and Robert Jenrick is married to a Care Bear. Jenrick was going, Under Labour, they have destroyed our national defense, particularly our Navy. It's like, no, actually, no. You've had 14 years of conservative government, and they were the ones that wouldn't fund the military more so. It's just interesting how they immediately go on the attack about stuff that they didn't achieve. Much like I said, they released all these people from prison. And it was entertaining as Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have been going around saying that Liz Truss destroyed the economy. And then Liz Truss sent them a letter recently. She's like, "You are not to defame me. It is unfair to say I destroyed the economy." It's like these people, they're children. Not too long back, Dominic Raab, he was a senior member, I think he was deputy PM, and he had to be forced out of office because of bullying allegations. I'm like, dude, this is a senior figure in what purports to be something of a world actor, and you're concerned about bullying. I mean, this is, like I said, the UK is a perfect picture of what's going to happen to Western countries if they don't start cleaning house. And I don't mean just another election. So ultimately, the Conservative Party leadership campaign is won by this Kemi Badenoch. And I tried listening to her. She sounds like a British Shaniqua. I mean, we need to be talking about these trans people. I don't know. Another diversity wonderkin who's going to save the day. I don't see her doing well, but maybe I'll be proven wrong because it seems like Starmer's government has already lost like 2 ministers. One, she committed perjury. The other one, she's tied to Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh, and she was involved potentially in embezzlement in that country. So we'll see. In the end, though, we have a situation, as you can see here, a nice British Stacey model. She's talking about she left the UK to teach English in Hong Kong because the economy is terrible. And I've heard a lot of this. In fact, we should probably be Trump should create an asylum program for people from the UK to come to America, because the UK is at this stage, I think it would have to be liberated by a foreign power. I don't believe it's going to be organic at all, because you see these guys that go out and they get into bouts of fisticuffs over sports teams, but the vast majority of them don't really care about all the social problems, the breakdown, the economic crisis. That's somewhat secondary. So let me know what you think about the Brits and their political system.
Sorry about that.
You're
If that
muted.
doesn't mirror, yeah, I realize that. If that doesn't mirror United States politics, I don't know what does. I mean, it's just squirm, baby, squirm. Come on, get on here. Cut it out.
It's not my squirm. What are you talking about?
Right?
This is the Andrew squirm term. But that's very interesting. It mirrors American politics and UK politics, kind of do mirror each other, but not really, to a certain extent, because the UK has they've disheveled themselves through the last 15, 20 years,
Well,
more
it's like
so.
gradual and then suddenly, right?
Yeah, and actually, I would actually argue, going all the way back into the 80s, with Margaret Thatcher's election to prime minister, the conservative politics, it does go hand in hand with progressivism. Like, it's just like what Michael Malice says. Conservatives are literally just progressives driving the speed limit. I mean, it's a bumpy road. Sure, they do take an exit every so often that allows you to get some sort of reprieve from these progressive policies that just destroy culture or destroy society by permitting immoral decadence of culture.
And then,
but it all starts with the conservatives.
You try to change something, and as soon as you actually show that you have a spine or a backbone, they kick you out, and they label you in everything under the sun. You're just a threat to their power, and they don't like that. But if you try to speak up privately, you go to jail. I mean,
yeah,
that happened.
Tommy Robinson, for example. No, go ahead.
To say, I mean, he spoke out like and that's the stuff that he's been talking about. That's offensive and chaotic, and you're a terrorist just for trying to ask questions about reality in his own country. So I mean,
That's the disgusting aspect of all this is the fact that we're so muffled into this left right paradigm of bullshit that the mask is being covered over your face to see what's really going on. These people hate you. They hate you, Britain. It doesn't matter if they're conservative or labor. I mean, the fact of the matter is, and he brought this point under Keir Starmer's government, the Labor Party is destroying itself. They literally are. I mean, it's almost like it was meant to be. The Conservative Party, the Tories created the system in place to destroy themselves, to allow the Labor Party to take hold. The Labor Party will destroy itself, and what is next is the Conservative Party will take up the arms of the state. They will become the power again for what? A tyrannical means. They will become conservative again, but not in the conservative fashion that you perceive. Not what you think conservatism is, tradcons. It's going to be conservatism as in tyranny, or tyranny, since we're in Britain. Yeah. It's going to be tyrannical means. It's going to be complete dominance over your everyday life. This is conservatism. Conservatism is to conserve the powers to be, to make sure that you are a subject to the crown. And Great Britain is going backwards. They've never lost that culture. They're still subservient to the government.
They're going backwards, not in a good way, but in a bad way.
I wouldn't even say they're going backwards. I think they're still stuck in the mentality of being subjects. It's just instead of the crown, which has lost its luster and is more ceremonious, you have the state, which is probably just as worse, because at least the crown you can manipulate into your favor.
Right. You think
I mean,
he was talking about people coming from the outside to save British culture and everything. Do you think that anything like that's going to actually happen? Elon Musk is talking about that, about how we need to reestablish order there, and I don't know. I just
Elon Musk, no. Elon Musk can go fuck himself. Elon Musk is showing his true colors now that he has his ropes into the political influence in his next stage of life. Elon Musk is a technocratic communist. He is exactly what the Conservative Party of Great Britain, or the Republican Party of the United States, has escalated further into, to give these progressive liberals power that inevitably destroy themselves, to hand back the power to the literal communists.
So power rhymes?
Power rhymes. Of course. History rhymes.
Yeah. I don't know. I just figured I'd see what you said. Kind of spitball and see what you'd say. So
I do like the idea. He's using the example, and he threw out Vivek Ramaswamy and the Republican base, the conservative base in the United States, thinking that somebody of Vivek's cultural heritage, his parents are obviously from India. They're not, they're naturalized now, obviously, but he's the savior of the immigration issue, but yet look at him. Do you really think he is?
He's not gonna be able to make any real moves. It seems like they're already trying to, push him away.
Are they trying to push him away, or is that a distraction that they want him to go for Ohio?
They're keeping him distracted, so he has something to do. Busy work.
Be a busy bee. Be the token Indian. That's literally what he is, by the way. He's the token Indian. That's pretty sad. That's pathetic. Both sides of they're two sides of the same coin, dude. They're all progressives. They're utilizing race-based identity politics to establish their power. They're all DEI. Look at UK. You look at the UK government. I mean, Martin makes a good point. I mean, the DEI initiatives and the just the trash racial identification came out of the Conservative Party. They literally own the government of the UK for the last 14 years. And you're pissed at the Labor? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. The prison reforms, the overcrowding, the release of criminals. This isn't new. This is just a power struggle. Of course, Of course. What do you think? Act like we're a bunch of lowbirds. What would the Lowbird Party what would they think of this ordeal in the UK?
I mean, they would say, "Hey, this is what we've been trying to warn you about. Now we need to do this particular thing, and this particular thing is going to fix everything for the rest of life."
I disagree.
How's that?
I think this is what the Lowbird Party actually advocates. It advocates for social decadence. It advocates for cultural disappropriation. It advocates for social decay. It advocates for you to lose your public parks. It advocates for you to lose your natural right to be able to actually, live and exist and correspond with whom you choose. The Lowbirds are communists. I'm sorry, but your party are the French socialists. They are the French socialists, the libertines of the French Revolution. They are the Jacobin class. They are the people that hate you. Lowbirds are not libertarian in the essence of what you perceive libertarianism is about. Libertarianism are the libertine, disgusting pedophiles of the Jacobin class. This is why the French Revolution occurred.
Yeah. You got American Revolution on the right, British Revolution on the left. What do you expect? Someone's got to go somewhere.
I mean, you said it yourself. It's the right. It's not it shouldn't be the right versus left. It should be the white versus red. And in this case, who is the Red Army at this point, and who is the White Army? It sounds a little suspicious, like the
cross-pollination.
Liberals. Yeah, it sounds more suspicious that the Liberals are actually the White Army and the Conservatives are the Red Army waiting their turn, waiting to strike. And they all consolidate together eventually to seize hold of power. And then you get Stalin, who was not White or Red Army. Stalin was just a straight up egomaniacal, dictatorial tyrant. He was an opportunist that utilized the Bolshevik Revolution and the white-red paradigm to his advantage, taking out those against
authoritarian dictators do.
That's all. Yeah. No, you hit it. No, go on. There was
this one soldier from World War One. Oh, I'm not allowed to talk about him on YouTube. Never mind.
It would have been better if that. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a psyop. They knew it. They knew this one soldier, this courier, was going to be a big part of history, and they said, you know what? I'm just going to let him go. I just can't do it. I can't pull the trigger. No, but that is interesting. The fact is there was one scenario where that man that I cannot say his name for YouTube, a courier for the German army, a very tiny mustache gentleman, there was a chance that he could have no longer existed to rise to power in Germany. All it took was one shot. And wasn't that Britain? Wasn't that a British soldier? Was it a British soldier, or was it French?
I believe it was British.
You heard it from Andrew, everybody. The first collaboration with the National Socialist German Workers' Party. It was Britain. It was one British soldier. He wanted it to happen.
Well,
So who's
this
the
has been a good
champion?
episode.
Yeah, who's the champion there, Andrew? Are we the champions?
Oh,
Are the Conservative Party of the UK the champions?
I thought it was OHIO, but I O.
Well, you're supposed to do the I. You want me to teach you? Very,
No, I'm
very
fine.
easy. You want to learn spelling?
I think I know how to spell.
I
It's
don't
spelled
think you know how to spell,
backwards.
dude. How do you spell Ohio backwards?
Ohio, Ohio.
So, but yeah. One last thing. What do you gander on the future of the UK? Do you besides what Martin corresponded there, it probably can't be saved organically. What do you think is going to happen on a
You
foreign
know,
policy level?
generally speaking, countries, I'm more black pill about people than countries, but in this particular instance, it's been going on for so long. It's there's no saving. Yeah, yeah. Great Britain. It's I'm pretty black pilled about it.
So they will be within 5 years' time. They will be
That's
an
kind of short.
Islamic republic.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
5 to 10 years.
the Caliph will finally be victorious in Europe.
That's right.
So the Turks have won. They finally won. That's all they. I mean, honestly, if you look through history, they lost. They overexpanded themselves militarily, politically. They got stuck in Eastern Europe, but since the fall of the Ottomans, what do you think? What do you think they did? They just infiltrated. They infiltrated the Western influence of politics. So I think that
Well,
yeah, I think this might have been a. I'm only this is just conjecture, in my opinion, but this seems like this might be a Ottoman Turk plot to take over Europe.
it could be. I mean, Erdogan, he warned us. He warned us, and we wouldn't listen.
Yeah,
You damn Europeans! Look what
yeah.
I got back here. I'm not afraid.
hmm
Just unleash
Look
the
what I got
beast.
back there. I'm a champion.
Uh,
The conservative.
that's
Yeah,
right.
I'm a champion. OHIO. The Conservative Party of the UK. Losers.
I'm gonna go cook with Hans. I'll talk to you later. He's gonna have something
All
good in the
right.
kitchen.
Well,
Bye.
with that, Andrew, we're done for today. Enjoy the episode. This is probably the longest of the legacy news, but it was something we had to get out. So I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, follow us everywhere, and just share out this information. What do you think? Drop a comment. Join the conversation. What do you think is wrong with the world and the UK and the US for that matter? What do you think is wrong with the political system of the world? And where do you think we go from here? How do we fix it? So drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe. With that, OHIO. We are the champions, baby. Undisputed. 10 years in waiting.
Fisticuffs.
We win. We win. So, but at the same time, God bless you, the United Kingdom. And God bless the rest of the world and the rest of the West. You need it. So, embrace the Lord. With that, I am the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser. That's Andrew Joseph. I don't know if you'll be able to see this because of my background, but live long and
I can see it.
prosper. Peace.
Peace.